Welcome to the Effective Engineering Manager podcast.
Hello, Adam. It's your time today. What would you like to talk about?
Hey, Slava. Today I'd like to continue our team building series and talk about all-star teams and how they should be avoided.
That's interesting. All-star teams sounds like a bunch of high performers, and that would be ideal, no?
It is interesting that you think that, and that is a common thread, and that's actually something I thought at one point. But actually, what you want is just the opposite. And it's interesting because oftentimes people think I need to have the best of everybody to have a good team. And that's a little bit of a misconception. And the reason is as follows. All-star teams are really only good for one purpose, and that's for sports entertainment value. I think that's the only time we really ever hear about all-star teams, these all-star sports events and other types of things. And it's really just for what? It's just to take all the top performers and put them in a arena, sometimes physically, against each other, and for show, right? And ultimately what happens is it becomes disappointing, right? Because the expectations are high. But more importantly, the underlying part of that is that each one of those all-stars are the exceeding at the same level at the same thing. So the only thing possible for them to do is to compete with each other. And so effectively what happens is when you have these teams that operate like this, and even in the professional world, the all-stars are working in silos because they know the culture has created an environment where they are competing against each other for the same goals. And so instead of becoming collaborative, they're becoming competitors. And so as they become competitors, you have a bunch of clones, right? So it seems like you might have 5 people on the team that are all, go-getters, outperforming, and all have come through the same path. And maybe even came through, they maybe came up in the organization through the exact same route, or in different organizations through the same route, but ultimately the same background. And so they're all the same in terms of their ability, their strengths. And ultimately what happens there is you inhibit collaboration because you've created silos. And you miss an opportunity to build a complementary team leveraging useful skills from each individual on their own. And if you go back to the sports analogy, for example, and you look at some of the teams that have been most successful, if you look at championship teams each year in whatever your favorite sport is, there are like 2 common threads there. The first is the teams that become champions become champions not just because they are the best performing team in terms of numbers, but because they're the team that gelled the best for the duration of the season, right? They've collaborated, they've worked well, and they fit gaps where there were needs, right? So, one person was good at one thing, another person was good at another, and so on. And then you have a complete team. You have a team. It's not a sum of all the individuals. It's a complementary set, unifying force. And so I think that's such a perfect analogy because that shows you how, in theory, yes, it sounds great on paper to have folks that are all great, A+ individuals in their skill set. But when you talk about them in a team concept, it doesn't work because it doesn't create this culture of collaboration or interaction where they can help each other for a common cause. So that's a little bit of why all-star teams are not ideal, and we'll get into that a little bit more.
That actually makes sense, and I've seen that happen on occasion and have tried to find ways to help address that. So how do you propose building teams without all-stars?
Yeah, and this is getting into the crux of it. So to do that, though, first let's talk about what it means to build and compose a team. Right. So let's forget about trying to just get the best talent out there. And let's first talk about what it is we actually need. What is the team that we're trying to build ultimately going to look like? And depending on the current maturity and growth level of your team and current dynamics of where the team is or the organization is, there could be very different requirements for what types of skills or individuals you need at that time. And that's key because the requirements will change. if you were building a team from scratch, even in a, in an existing organization, either way, if it's a new team, the focus there often is going to be on finding folks who have some expertise, who self-initiate, and who can often solve ambiguous problems on their own, right? Especially in the engineering context. And why is that? Because with a small team, you have to rely on the few folks that you have to build a foundation, whether it's a new platform, a new project, new feature, whatever it is. It's all something relatively new. And you can't just have a bunch of junior folks who've never done anything like that before. So there has to have folks that have good context, people that can self-initiate, and oftentimes people who, to be frank, aren't going to ask a lot of questions up front. I mean, they're going to say they understand the context, say they know they have to get something moving so that you can move forward from where you're at. Once you have that early start teams, then you start to get into growth teams. So as that small team starts to grow over time, now your requirements start to change, and now your expertise areas change. As the team grows, that certainly aligns with the need to have more people doing work, right? As your team grows, responsibilities grow. You're getting more work. The product is starting to mature as well, and you're going to need more people who can backfill or fill the requirements of the team that was there. So, for example, people that need to code, people that need to do more testing, people need to branch out and build, some automation and perhaps some pipelines and stuff like that, right? So you're going to need folks to fill those roles, and you're also going to need to start taking some of the folks who you might have had early on and kind of convert them into expertise type role, right? So they'll kind of step away from, being completely hands-on and maybe starting to help connect the parts together and understand, play more of a system role or a subject matter expert role in certain things that they've already set the foundation for. And then as you move on from there, and as the team starts to grow and the product starts to grow and you've come to a more mature point in the team growth cycle, now is when things really start to crystallize, because now this is the time when the team can maximize on the vision and cultural ideals that you want for that team. And so in mature teams, you want to look at growth plans for each person and to avoid intersection, right? And what that means is now that you have a larger team or mature team, they're going to be starting to look out for how they can grow, right? Because they're going to start to see there's a little bit of a plateau or there's more stability and it's more just, repeating some of the same things over and over again, because that's common in mature products. You don't want that to, demotivate the team or the individuals from continuing to perform. So at this stage, you need a separate path for each individual on that team to go. And that is so key. That's why one-on-ones are so important. That's why coaching and mentoring is so important, because everything should be tailored to the individual. And this is where you start to steer away from all-star teams, because you're starting to create specific coaching plans for each person so that they do not intersect each other, right? Person A and person B can still grow and get promoted and do great things, but not measured against the same thing. Therefore, you're not creating silos. And the silver lining to all this is that you're emphasizing collaboration and mentoring across the team, not individual performance. So the more that folks are willing to collaborate with each other and help each other out, the more that they're going to get rewarded overall, because they're helping the overall team. And that's the goal. The goal is not to help themselves, but to help the overall team. And so you're creating these paths for retention and creating this culture where if somebody does ultimately leave the team, there's already this interweb of interaction and collaboration that someone new can come in and fall right in and, kind of understand the culture and feel like they're people to help them and grow. And the goal here is to maintain a solid team culture as best as possible. So in the end, the goal here is not to reward each person against a single rubric, but instead to reward each person against a multiple set of dimensions. Number one, how they perform relative to the role they are in, how well they enable the rest of the team to be successful, and how an individual fills a gap of need in the team, effectively becoming a subject matter expert on an area not yet touched. And just a quick anecdote on this one, how I came to that part is when I first started my first job as an engineer, I remember in the first week I was given a task. And this task was on something that the rest of the team didn't really know. And I didn't know that at the time. I thought I was just being given a task that I had to, common bug fix, do this. And it turned out no one else knew how to do that. And that's why it kind of was there. And once I realized that, I started to realize, oh, wow, this is a great opportunity to learn something new. And even more importantly, once I completed the task, other people on the team immediately saw me as an expert in that area. Even though I was the junior person and just there for a couple of weeks, I was already an expert in an area that nobody else was. It wasn't anything major, but it was still something. And for years, people would come to me thinking I'm the expert on that particular area. And I realized, and I've mentored every person that has come to my team over the years. I've told them that story. And I've said, look, we build very complex systems, but don't worry about understanding the whole system. Find one thing or take whatever task you're given and use it as an opportunity, because most likely you can become an expert on that someone else is not. And I think if you look at that and try to adapt that to your team's culture, you'll find that experts, there's no dearth for expertise, and anybody on your team can build that expertise, and ultimately that will put them on a path to feeling empowered to learn and be a part of the team and ultimately share with others. And once they're starting to share with others, now you're going back to what we were just talking about in terms of building a culture of mentorship and collaboration. So that's really how you look at it. You look at how what you're looking to do to compose a team, and in the dimensions of where your team is currently at in the growth stage, and respective to the different dimensions that we just talked about.
Well, this is great, and this is a refreshing way to look at composing teams, and also ensures that there's always a way to focus on growth paths instead of creating this culture of competition. And I really liked your point that we reward not only the actual job, but also how well the individual enables the rest of the team to be successful. I think it's a very good point. So certainly we can see that building cohesive teams is far more effective than grabbing a bunch of all-stars. So to recap, can you provide a short checklist for our listeners on how they can strategically avoid having all-star teams?
Sure thing. So number one, define the team's culture and vision. As the leader, it doesn't matter where you're at. Define what you want the culture and vision to be and let that permeate in many ways. Number two, identify the current state of growth of the team. Where is the team currently at relative to where you need to be and where you're wanting to be? Because that ultimately determines your requirements. Number three, identify the current gaps of the team in terms of expertise, experience, and even diversity. Always look to fill those gaps. Number four, recruit folks who match the current needs of the team. Simple. Don't try to look for the same folks all the time. Look for what the current needs are. And last, build a coaching and mentor program within the team to help cultivate the roles that are there so that the roles can grow and individuals can always feel empowered for possible growth.
Thank you, Adam. This is really good stuff.
Thank you, Slava. More good stuff is certainly on its way as usual, so stay tuned.